Please subscribe, like, and share. Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good night. For whatever part of the world you're from, welcome again. Thank you for tuning into my channel. Anyway, it's another year has gone by and we're at the realm of another year, 2023, and I have very many people to thank for our success and ongoing forward on this channel. I have very many people to thank, and I get a lot of questions, a lot of calls, and people are going, how did you get where you're at? You seem to know this and know that. Well, it didn't happen overnight. Nobody's born with, an extraordinary mechanical abilities. Experience is the best teacher, and of course, wisdom tells us the direction from what we've learned in our life on which path to take to keep moving forward. I have always said, you never get there by yourself. Along the way, there are people that has given us assistance, guidance, taught us, teacher-student scenario, and we move on from there. And I would like to thank, first and foremost, my mentor, Charles D.C. Stevens. He has passed on years ago, and he took me from being a race car driver / builder to advanced courses that I've learned, and basically gave me a lot of deeper insight and understanding into our sport. And I remember years ago when my brother and I would go to Wednesday night races at Orange County racetrack in California, and I used to look at some of these kids my age, our age. At that time I was 17, my brother was 19, and we'd go to the racetrack. I would flat tail my car with a 70 Torino, and we'd go there run, and I'd stare next door to the next pit stall or that side, and always dawned on me that I see these kids our age get their dads with them, helping them out. We had none of that. My brother and I grew up, our fighter pilot father died in a mid-air collision between two Air Force jets, and he was never found. Therefore, I said to myself, well, if I have to learn in this sport and be good at it, I better know the fundamentals. And that's when Charles Stevens came into my path and sent me to all these applied science courses, conferences, engineering, and I was grateful. And he was my mentor and guided me through the years, and eventually the more I understood the fundamentals of engineering, then the cars started getting faster and faster, because it wasn't guesswork anymore. You have an informed knowledge from the education that went on in this head. And I tell you what, the School of Hard Knocks is not enough. In this age of technology, it is driven by that. You can't be a mechanic anymore, and you're not called a mechanic. You're a technician beyond, technician plus. And understanding the theoretical and the factual things that really goes on, it really changes your attitude. That's why at that particular time I said to him, we were running nitrous and Buick Grand Nationals, Mustangs, turbo, nitrous, supercharger, and I elected to go NA because I wanted to learn more. And I love competition, and I was the only NA guy running that class. And people always go, wow, what's the Lone Ranger doing there? But anyway, I just wanted to learn. You know, winning is great, but I wanted to learn more. And I won a bunch of races, even though I'm NA. But to me, it's a good educational experience and process to go to. Now, what are the courses that I took? Automotive and diesel, technology, did that. Then I went to aerospace, technology, airframe, jet engines, turbines, reciprocating engines, which are basically automotive engines or regular engines with a piston, flat opposed, and aerodynamics, airframe, most F1, Indy, NASCAR. If you want to go to hardcore racing, they all have aircraft background. In fact, most of these drivers, especially in NASCAR, are pilots. A lot of them are. Because they started in the sport just like everybody else, wrenching around, but when you have an aerospace background, it gives you the fundamentals of aerodynamics, understanding how the air works around an object that's traveling at high speed or low speed, how the air behaves. And from that scenario, I understood what a port is doing with the air traveling through. And you see angles, degrees that the air separates from the airfoil, or you know what not to look for, so forth and so on. All those deeper insights comes into play when you're in the advanced stage of engineering as a technician. You're not a mechanic anymore. You're a technician. You have the technological background. You're not a remove and replace parts changer. You know the fundamentals and the science behind it. And I get a lot of calls. How did you get to this point? How did you got better at it? Well, you have to study. And like I said to everybody else, education is not wasted. It's always a good background. Now, there are things experience teaches you, you know, because nobody's born with a natural mechanical ability. Experience is the best teacher. And learning with that wisdom becomes the path that you take from the experience you learned and points you to the direction that you're going to go to proceed. It is very important that you have a background, the proper educational background, because at this day and age, just school of hard knocks is not going to cut it. Okay, so when somebody tells you, oh, air does this, it sucks the air into the port, it does not. There is no such thing. So you start to know the nitty-gritty. Now, and about these videos that I started about 2 years ago, and then for the longest of time I just sat there, not really proficient with computers or even going around this YouTube thing. I don't even know how to work this doggone camera, but I give a good thanks to my late friend who passed away about 3 months ago, Hector Vasquez, and he's been instrumental in me forming this channel. He's a friend with another famous guy out there who for many years has been given videos and a lot of technical books, so forth so on, through the magazines. He's friends with him and with me, And they kept saying, Ben, you have so much racetrack experience. Do videos and forward your experience. You got to do it, friend. And yes, I did. In fact, on the very bottom of this channel, a quick, I don't even think it's 2 minutes, video that was with Hector, that we started this video upon his prodding, and I'll forever be in debt to him for him insisting that I do videos with a lot of these technical subjects backed by years of experience building engines for the racetrack, not for the magazines or plain dyno and flow testing and talking about it. He wants me to forward that message to all of you, and thanks to him, may he rest in peace. I miss him a whole bunch. And also, what prompted this is years ago, one of the pioneers in racing, Joe Mondello, who started the wet flow bench. He had a technical school out there in Santa Maria, and I was at an engineering conference with my mentor Chuck Stevens, and he was trying so hard to get me to work for him at his technical school to teach. And he was asking me a lot of questions. I was answering him. I didn't realize that he offered me a job 3 days later at the PRI, and he really tried hard. And I said, you know, it's kind of hard for me to work. I would love to work for you at your school. And he was developing the wet flow bench at that time. But I was working for LIP at that time. The pension, the income was good. He says, okay, Ben, give me your how much money you're making PD and your retirement, and let me see if I can match it. So, in fact, even when we left the PRI and the advanced conference before that, he went on the plane and told my mentor, hey Chuck, could we just swap seats? I need to talk to Benny some more. And Chuck goes, fine, and took a seat, and Joe sat beside me. He talked my ear off, trying really hard. I said, yeah, Joe. I called him Mr. Mondello. I'll send you my resume and all that, how much money I make. And he even offered me to go there, put me on a hotel. He'll give me a tour of the facility and talk to me some more. And I would love, especially when I started seeing him trying to develop the wet flow bench, and that was a innovation that changed our thinking of how air flows into the engine. But anyway, towards the end, I got back with him, and he responded, I would still love to have you here and work with me at my technical school, Joe Mondello Technical Schools, but I couldn't match your pension or your income, your how much you make at LAPD. But always keep me in mind, and I would love you to work for me. And that was the end of that. And later, that said, I started winning races in the 80s and to the 90s, so on until now. And a lot of guys will notice that you're running very fast, or you have a bunch of cars in a certain event, and they come up to you and say, hey, what's going on? How could you explain how this happened? And then you give an answer. And a lot of them, there's a lot of good magazine writers out there, but they are writers, first and foremost. They are not racers. Two different scenarios. They know what a fast car looks like because they showcase it in their work. But what makes them tick, what makes them run is a whole different ball game. And then you're given all these explanation, and they go, I never heard of this before. That being said, I ended up meeting Isaac Martin, and we ended up with a book from HP Books about small block Fords and building them. And I collaborated with Isaac Martin, and then we came up with that book. Oh my God! So soon after this 5.0 craze got started, the new muscle car age, with the Fox Body Mustangs and the Grand Nationals and so forth and so on. And then I collaborated with Bob McClurg, another very famous writer for Hot Rod Magazine and all that. We did about, oh my God, 25? I total about 50 magazines that I appeared in. And I tell you what, you get, when these writers see a bunch of people, not only in the United States, from around the world, and they zero in on you, out of the hundreds that they meet and see every year, every race, every event that they go through, and they zero in on you. In particular, like I said, I appeared in over 50 magazines, because you must be doing something right. And like again, I said, the background, you got to educate yourself. I want everybody to do that, to get to this level that is beyond, you know, suck, squeeze, and bang. Okay? That is, but that's basically the sophistication that many come up to. And I've always stated that when you start learning the proper context of what you're looking at, then you have a deeper understanding of what is actually going on, as opposed to what you think is going on. Now, what I advise everybody else is that you zero in on one particular field. I don't profess to know everything about the engine, the transmission, the rear end, the suspension. No. When I work on a race car, I focus on the engine, and if there's a suspension guy in there, like at that time, God bless his soul, Big Ed, he's been part of us till he passed away unexpectedly. I leave it up to them. And a trans guy I'm dealing with, I leave it up to them. Okay, you cannot be a jack of all trades, master of none. That is a true statement. If you focus on cylinder head and that is your expertise, boom, you have one part of the big puzzle called engineering. And if you're good at that, then you move on. I understand from my aerospace background how the air works / cylinder heads, what it does. And then I go on to my block assembly, big stroke, short stroke, big bore versus small bore. You start to know the fundamentals, but I focus on the engine. I suggest same thing with you guys. And again, you cannot go through here by being a, what do you call that? A School of Hard Knocks graduate. Because today technology is so easy to do, because there's the internet. Internet has a lot of information, but not enough knowledge. Do you see the difference? Now, let me keep this thing simple. Years ago when I was in high school, I memorized the telephone number of my work, my mother, my brother, and all my other friends up here. Today, sometimes I look back, I look at my wife's Carmen's phone. What is her phone? Because I'm so dependent on this doggone telephone and all the numbers in it, that it has become part of my brain function. Not here, but here. I'm dependent on that machine / technology. Same thing with our own engine building. People start to focus on the technology rather than the knowledge. I suggest you do both and get a bigger spectrum of understanding I tell you, and I've seen you guys do this many, many times. When you, at that time, I travel far, I love driving, I get to a place, reading the instruction, looking, and I get there. And more likely than not, next time I come back, days, weeks, months later, I can come back to the same location. But today, I put on navigation, turn left, turn right, go straight 5 miles, turn left, and here you are. And you know what? You didn't learn anything. The machine told you what to think and what to do. So when you don't have the navigation, you try to find your way, you can't find your way. Not like back in the olden days, you look at marks, landscape marks. Okay, after this hill coming down, there's a building on my left, and you follow. But you don't look at those things now with the navigation. You go 500 feet, make a left. You're like a horse, you know, with this blinders that you just focus on the front. You don't see anything on the outside. And I would like everybody to get a better understanding. In fact, Earl Wade, one of the famous engine builders years and years ago when I was with Stampede, Larry Knapp, and we're out there running, and he looks at me, he says, Ben, I gotta give it to you, man. You are taking over, this is years ago, and a lot of the guys that are building engines today, all they understand is boost and boost and boost, nothing more. They build a half-ass engine, they pound a lot of boost in it, blam! Of course they'd run. You're normally aspirating it like drugs. You're not a runner, but they shoot you with a lot of steroids. Now you can do pretty good. You get extraordinary power because you boosted your blood. Same thing with the engine. He said, I like what you're doing and keep it up. You know the fundamentals, you know the basics on what it takes to build a good engine, and then if you want to go supercharging, turbocharging later on, you got it. You know the difference. And it's proven. And I've done that many times. In fact, I showed somebody here in Vegas about, and we're going to talk about this in future segments, about how the exhaust is too big in most engines, exhaust valve. Too much exhaust flow. And I showed it to them. I went to one angle on the exhaust, multi-angles on the intake, of course. Under boost or NA, it helps. But the exhaust, and I'll explain that. And when they went to the dyno, they're looking at me, and they go, wow, the boost comes in earlier, the response is so much better, and we have a smaller exhaust valve. Think about that. And same thing with a friend of mine, Max from Gage Motorsports, and I shrunk their exhaust valve, and I said, let's limit the exhaust port, and people will kill for 3 to 5% power. And when they were done, he called me up and said they got 23% more power with a smaller exhaust valve and exhaust flow. I will get to this video, there are exceptions to that rule. Eventually, if we get to the extreme, it kind of reverses itself. But I'll explain that in a future video. But that is exactly what I want everybody to learn. I sit down and talk like this, where it's like a one-to-one, a personal thing, and you guys throw me any questions down below, and I'll gladly answer it. Because life is really not that simple. There are complex, just like in combustion. It's a chemical reaction with complex action and reaction, and it can get very complicated. And when people, for example, the how should I say, the one that didn't have the proper schooling background, and I've heard it many times when I used to race two-strokes. There was one shop that designed their own cylinder heads and combustion chamber. The guy kept saying, I have a very explosive combustion chamber. Explosive. Wow. So explosive slash explosion is the same, isn't it? So if you have an explosion inside that engine, how can that stay together? I remember at LAPD when I retired, I saw a bomb that they put in this little bell that the bomb squad always uses. And I worked on that thing years ago. And they put the bomb in that bell and they put the cover on. It blew up and the whole bell, it's a thick steel, blew out and knocked the car off its side that was parked beside it. That is an explosion. What we have is a fast burn scenario. Now every time that flame front starts, it accelerates and wants to become an explosion. That's what we have to stop in the racing world. And I will proceed with that. Like I said, it's nice to have this sit-down talk where I could pretty much not just sit here like a professor, which I'm not. We could sit down and talk basic. Let's get down to the bench racing conversation that is more, I guess, effective, because it's like I'm talking to you one-to-one. I'm not talking over there giving you some kind of, oh, it flows like this, therefore it's better that way. Well, not really. This head flows more, so that's a better cylinder head. Not really. This engine has more horsepower and over that engine, and it should be faster. Not really. Okay? You don't look at the peak power, you look at the broad spectrum. There are many instances where a weaker engine, horsepower-wise, will get out of a corner, accelerate stronger, but it's got a better mid-range pull or a better torque curve, and it accelerates and makes the stronger engine look like poop. Well, what happened there? Because you had a lot more response. I remember when I was running my Odysseys, and there's this two, I call the Blues Brothers, they would always gang up on me on the open desert, and then we come into a corner, they would get on it, and I'd pull out. It's a lot stronger than they do, because my balance between my CC, my intake port diameter, my carburation that I use, and the compression was a lot more efficient than they were. And I would pull out a corner and pull away from them. 2 strokes. And they would draft, and we had like I think a 3 or 4 mile straightaway, and they would get right behind me and they would draft and try to slingshot past me. It don't work. Because really their engine is, their carburetor is too big and bogs down on top end. You know. Mine, you hear the intake, it's really pulling good, like they say, it gets on the pipe. You hear the intake. But when you hear this, too much intake. Okay? And it's amazing how I've come across guys go, hey Ben, after you did the heads and we did the exhaust, it's not as loud as before, it's quieter. Yes, because it's more efficient. Okay? When you're looking at a flow bench, you're looking at an exhaust port or an intake port, you're flowing it, and it's flowing really, really bad. It's got a lot of turbulence. You hear this, okay, making all sorts of racket. Same thing with exhaust. But once you get the port correctly, and you're a max flow, max lift, you go, it actually gets quiet. Same thing with the engines. Remember, we've done that, my buddy and I before. He has a Volkswagen, I got my mom's Pinto, Volkswagen Beetle, we'd drag race each other. You know, you drop the exhaust, so forth, so on. Man, that sucker makes a lot of racket, a lot of turbulence. The exhaust manifold is turbulent. It makes a lot of noise. It doesn't do anything. But when you have an efficient system, like a tuned header and all that, it's still noisy, but a nice sounding noise. Okay, it's more should I say, uh, even just by listening to it, it's appreciatively a lot better sounding. You know, making this, not going anywhere. But you go, you go, okay. That's what I'm saying. The dynamics, the fundamentals. Ports that are efficient get quieter. You see some race cars sometimes when, just look at NASCAR. They don't have any muffler. When they go by, you go, wow, that sounded really not that loud. I was just a speedway last time. Again, reminded me. In fact, my buddy told me, how come they're not really that loud? Yeah, they have a tune system. Everything works. So like I said, if you want me to keep going with all these little sit-down talks, Fireside, I got my fireplace going, Fireside talks, I think we have a lot more to learn, and I can interact with you guys on your questions, so or so on, down below. We can go back and forth, and this is not a one-way street. I have still yet to learn a lot more. By the time I stop learning, I'm probably dead. There's not enough in this lifetime to know everything. No man is a mountain. We all learn from each other. I wasn't born with a wrench in my hand and gears on my brain. No, that comes from learning every day, experience. Eventually experience comes wisdom, and eventually wisdom tells us the path to go and to make the right choices. Anyway, Happy New Year, guys. Let us proceed. And oh my gosh, I have thousands of views, and I'm grateful to everybody. And let's keep this thing going, and God bless America, our family, our loved ones. Hopefully we live long and longer to enjoy each and every one.